Meet Paul. He just scored a perfect 120 on his TOEFL exam. He knows every grammar rule, every preposition, and hasn't made a spelling mistake in years. But last night at a dinner party, he sat in complete silence. When he did speak, people looked at him like he was a robot reading from a manual. Paul realized the hard way, the more perfect your English is, the less people actually want to talk to you. You've spent years studying to be correct, but in the next few minutes I'm going to show you why that's exactly what's stopping you from being fluent. Imagine Paul stepping into a bustling local coffee shop. The air is thick with the scent of roasted beans and the rhythmic clatter of ceramic cups. Paul approaches the counter with a script running in his mind like a computer program. He says, "I would like to inquire whether it is possible for me to obtain a medium-sized latte with oat milk, and please ensure there is no additional sugar." The barista pauses, a look of brief confusion crossing his face before he responds, "Sure thing, man. 1 oat latte, no sugar. Anything else?" In that small exchange, Paul didn't just order a drink, he accidentally built a wall. He was technically flawless, yet he was socially invisible. He used the language of a legal contract in a space that requires the language of a heartbeat. He was delivering a performance instead of participating in a moment. Now look at Nick, who stands in line right behind him. Nick has never mastered the third conditional, and his vocabulary is quite modest. When he reaches the counter, he leans in with a tired smile and says, "Hey, can I grab a coffee? Actually, make it a latte. Oat milk? Thanks, appreciate it." In Nick's English is messy. It's full of pauses, mid-sentence pivots, and grammatically inferior structures. Yet the barista smiles back, cracks a joke about the morning rush, and they share a brief, genuine connection. This is the great paradox of language that few teachers will tell you. While Paul was busy building a fortress of perfect syntax, Nick was building a bridge. Nick understands that language isn't an exam to be passed. It is a vehicle for human connection. This brings us to the core of the struggle for many advanced learners, the correctness trap. For decades, our education systems have treated English as a series of puzzles to be solved, emphasizing accuracy above all else. We are conditioned to fear the red pen, leading us to prioritize the rules of the book over the rhythm of the room. But academic English is often rigid, cold, and transactional. It lacks the warmth and the filler words that make speech feel natural. When you speak with excessive precision, you inadvertently signal to others that you are focused on your own performance, rather than on them. It creates a psychological distance, making your listeners feel like they are watching a lecture rather than enjoying a conversation. To reach true fluency, you must be brave enough to be comfortably imperfect. You must realize that a misplaced preposition or a simple sentence structure matters far less than a shared laugh or a look of understanding. Paul's mistake wasn't his grammar. It was his belief that being right was the same as being understood. The goal of language is not to sound like a machine, it is to sound like a person. As we dive deeper into this journey, we must dismantle the idea that better English means more complex English. Real fluency is the ability to be yourself in another language, and that begins the moment you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be present. Imagine a musician sitting at a grand piano, fingers poised delicately above the keys. If they focus solely on the mechanical movement of each individual finger, calculating the exact pressure and angle required for every note, the melody becomes jagged and loses its soul. This is the heart of the fluency paradox. In our quest for English mastery, we often fall into the trap of believing that intense, conscious effort is the primary driver of progress. We believe that by tightening our grip on the rules, we will somehow achieve a smoother flow. Yet the reality is often the opposite. The harder you strive to be technically perfect in a live conversation, the more artificial and fragmented your speech becomes. It is a cruel irony. Your very desire to sound natural is often the wall that prevents you from being so. To understand why this happens, we must look into the mechanics of the human mind and the concept of cognitive load. When you speak your native language, the words flow from a place of subconscious intuition. You aren't thinking about subject-verb agreement or the subtle difference between who and whom. You are simply expressing a thought. However, for many English learners, every sentence becomes a frantic construction site. You are simultaneously trying to select the right vocabulary, apply complex grammar rules, and manage your pronunciation. This over-analysis creates a massive bottleneck in your brain. By the time you've mentally verified that your verb tense is correct, the rhythm of the conversation has already moved on, leaving you stuck in a silent, analytical void. This leads us to the silent shadow that haunts every learner, the internal editor. This is that small, critical voice in the back of your head that proofreads every sentence before you dare to let it leave your lips. While this editor is helpful when writing a formal essay, it is a lethal enemy to spoken fluency. The internal editor demands perfection, but in the realm of human connection, perfection is the enemy of the good. It forces you to hesitate, to stutter, and to second-guess your own instincts. This psychological barrier creates a sense of paralysis, where the fear of making a mistake outweighs the joy of communication. You become a prisoner of your own knowledge, knowing the rules so well that they prevent you from actually using them. Breaking the fluency paradox requires a fundamental shift in perspective. It demands the courage to be imperfect. Real fluency is not the absence of errors, it is the presence of flow. It is the ability to bridge the gap between thought and sound without the interference of a heavy-handed ego. When we stop trying to perform English and start living it, the paradox begins to dissolve. We must learn to trust the hundreds of hours of exposure we've already had and allow our intuition to take the wheel. Only by letting go of the desperate need for correctness can we finally find the freedom of expression we've been searching for all along. Think back to the fluorescent lights of your English classroom. You were likely told that grammar is a rigid set of ironclad laws, a map that must be followed with absolute precision. But here is the truth they never shared. Those laws were written for paper, not for people. For decades, traditional education has prioritized the written rule over the spoken flow, turning a living, breathing language into a series of static equations. This is the grammar trap, a mental cage that makes you hesitate before you speak, searching for a perfect structure that often doesn't exist in the real world. By focusing so heavily on the correct way to write, we have inadvertently forgotten how to communicate. To understand why this happened, we must look at the clash between prescriptive and descriptive linguistics. Your textbooks were prescriptive. They told you how language should be used based on standards set by scholars centuries ago. They treated English like a museum artifact to be preserved. However, the world speaks a descriptive language, one that evolves every single day based on how people actually communicate.
Descriptive grammar doesn't care about the rules of 18th century grammarians. It cares about clarity, emotion, and connection. When you realize that language is a social tool rather than an academic test, the pressure to be perfect begins to dissolve, allowing the true story of your voice to emerge. Let's look at a common example that haunts many learners. In school, you were taught the formal structure, I am going to. It is grammatically flawless, yet in the rhythm of a fast-paced conversation in New York or London, it can sound strangely robotic, almost mechanical. Compare that to the fluid, contracted IMA. While a teacher might mark it wrong with a red pen, IMA represents the natural evolution of sound and efficiency. It is the language of music, of movies, and of the heart. By clinging to the rigid I am going to, you might be technically correct, but you are missing the soulful cadence that defines native fluency. The goal isn't just to be understood, it's to be felt. The lie wasn't necessarily malicious, but it was limiting. Schools taught you the skeleton of the language, the bones, but they forgot to teach you about the skin, the breath, and the spirit. They taught you how to build a house, but not how to live in it. True fluency lies in the gray areas, the slang, the shortcuts, and the intentional breaking of rules to achieve a specific emphasis. As you move forward, remember that grammar is a guide, not a master. You are not a student sitting at a desk anymore. You're a storyteller. And in the world of stories, the most important rule is the one that allows you to connect with another human being, regardless of whether you ended your sentence with a preposition. Have you ever listened to a voice that sounded mathematically correct, yet felt entirely cold? In the world of robotics and animation, there is a phenomenon known as the uncanny valley, the point where a human-like creation becomes so realistic that it begins to evoke feelings of unease or even revulsion because of the tiny, missing elements of life. This same principle applies to the way we speak English. For many learners, the ultimate goal is a crystalline perfection, a speech pattern devoid of any hesitation or error. Yet when we strip away the natural rhythms of thought and replace them with a robotic precision, we often find ourselves trapped in a linguistic uncanny valley. Our words may be technically accurate, but they lack the warmth and the soul that truly connects one human being to another. In our pursuit of mastery, we often view filler words like well, or like as enemies of progress. We are taught to excise them as if they were tumors in our sentences, fearing they reveal a lack of confidence or a slow mind. However, in the lived experience of English conversation, these fillers serve as vital social signals. They are the breathing room of language, informing the listener that we are still thinking, still processing, and still engaged. When a speaker never pauses, never stumbles, and never uses a filler, they bypass the natural cadence of human cognition. This perfect flow can feel rehearsed or even insincere, creating a psychological distance between the speaker and the listener. The filler is not a failure. It is a bridge of shared humanity. There is a profound psychological truth in the idea that imperfection builds rapport. When we hear someone struggle slightly for a word or correct a minor slip, we are subconsciously reminded of their vulnerability. This shared vulnerability is the foundation of trust. In professional settings or intimate conversations, an overly polished performance can act as a shield, making the speaker seem unapproachable or even manipulative. By contrast, the slight cracks in our delivery allow our true personality to shine through. It is within those pauses and unplanned moments that our unique voice is truly found. We must realize that the goal of communication is not to produce a flawless script, but to foster a genuine connection.
As we look toward the future of global communication, we must embrace the messy, beautiful reality of the spoken word. The most inspiring speakers are rarely the ones who never make a mistake. They are the ones who use their language to evoke emotion, to share ideas, and to build community. English is a living, breathing entity, constantly evolving through the nuances of its speakers. To sound human is to accept the limitations of our own minds and to celebrate the spontaneous nature of thought. When you step away from the pressure of perfection and allow yourself to inhabit the natural flow of speech, complete with its pauses and imperfections, you finally step out of the uncanny valley and into a space of true, authentic resonance. Imagine standing on a busy street in London or New York, listening to the hum of conversation around you. To the untrained ear, it sounds like a relentless torrent of sound, a blurred rush where words bleed into one another without a clear beginning or end. You might feel a sense of frustration, wondering why native speakers seem to race through their sentences. But there is a secret hidden within that speed. It is not a race, it is an ancient subconscious system of efficiency. We call this the rule of economy. It is the silent engine that drives how native speakers actually think, prioritizing the flow of ideas over the precision of individual sounds. Once you understand this rule, the chaotic noise transforms into a beautifully structured symphony. At its core, the rule of economy is the linguistic version of the path of least resistance. Just as water carves a path through the softest soil to reach the ocean, the human brain seeks the most efficient way to transmit a message. This is why we eat our words. When a native speaker says, "I'm going to go," instead of "I am going to go," they aren't being lazy, they are practicing a sophisticated form of mental shorthand. We reduce the unimportant elements, the grammatical glue like prepositions and auxiliary verbs, so that the content words, nouns and verbs can shine brighter. In the mind of a native speaker, the sentence is a vehicle for meaning, and anything that slows down the delivery of that meaning is trimmed away. This brings us to the heartbeat of the English language, the concept of stress-timed rhythm. Unlike syllable-timed languages like Spanish, French, or Japanese, where every syllable receives roughly the same amount of time, English operates on a different clock. In English, we march to the beat of the stressed syllables. Imagine a drummer hitting a snare at regular intervals. No matter how many words we cram between those beats, the distance between the hits remains the same. This is why some words are stretched out and others are squeezed into almost nothingness. It is a rhythmic architecture that creates the unique bounce of English. When you stop trying to give every word equal importance, you stop fighting the language and start moving with its natural pulse. To think like a native is to embrace this economy of effort. It is a shift in mindset from seeing language as a series of isolated building blocks to seeing it as a fluid stream of energy. When you learn to let go of the need to pronounce every T or D at the end of every minor word, you are actually moving closer to the heart of how English-speaking cultures communicate. It is about impact over accuracy and rhythm over rigidity. This is the true soul of the language, a system designed for speed, connection, and the effortless exchange of human experience. As you move forward, remember that the goal isn't just to speak English, but to inhabit its rhythm, to breathe its economy, and to finally hear the music between the words. Have you ever wondered why, even after years of studying grammar and memorizing endless lists of vocabulary, the spoken language of a native speaker still feels like a rushing river you cannot quite cross? It is a common frustration, a wall that many learners hit just as they believe they are reaching the summit.
The secret is not found in more words or more complex rules, but in the invisible threads that bind our speech together. This is the art of connected speech, the hidden architecture of the English language that transforms a series of isolated sounds into a seamless, melodic stream of communication. It is the difference between a mechanical recitation and the soulful resonance of a storyteller who understands that language is meant to move. Consider the simple phrase, "not at all." On the page, these are three distinct units, separated by clear white spaces. But in the mouth of a seasoned speaker, these boundaries dissolve instantly. The T at the end of not leaps across the gap to join the A, and the final T of at bridges the distance to all. What you hear is something closer to not at all. This is not laziness or a lack of clarity. It is the natural efficiency of the human voice. We are designed to find the path of least resistance, allowing one sound to bleed into the next like colors in a watercolor painting. When you learn to see these links, the chaotic noise of fast speech suddenly organizes itself into a logical, rhythmic pattern that your brain can finally decode. Yet the secret sauce of English is not merely about the mechanics of joining sounds, it is about the music of the mind. Intonation, the rising and falling pitch of our voices, often carries more weight than the actual words we choose. A single sentence can transform from a curious question to a sarcastic remark, or from a gentle comfort to a stern warning, simply by shifting the melody. In English, we use our voices like instruments, emphasizing specific syllables to shine a spotlight on our intentions. Without this musicality, even the most grammatically perfect sentence feels hollow and robotic.
A student is preoccupied with being correct. A communicator is focused on being understood. When you embrace this shift, the heavy chains of perfectionism begin to fall away. You realize that a mistake is not a sign of failure, but a heartbeat of progress. The goal of language was never to be a walking dictionary. It was to build bridges between human souls. When you focus on the bridge rather than the individual bricks, you find a freedom you never thought possible. You speak because you have something to say, and that purpose carries your voice further than any textbook ever could. As we conclude this journey, let us speak of the one thing so many try to hide, the accent. Your accent is not a shadow or a stain on your English. It is a map of your history. It tells the story of where you came from, the music of your first language, and the incredible courage it took to learn a second one. An accent is a sign of bravery. It is the audible proof that you have stepped out of your comfort zone to meet the world halfway. There is a singular beauty in a voice that carries the echoes of different lands. It makes the world smaller, more intimate, and infinitely more interesting. Never apologize for the way your tongue shapes the sounds of a new world. So, what is the true meaning of fluency? It is the courage to be yourself in a language that is not your own. It is the joy of connecting, the resilience of learning, and the ultimate realization that you belong in every conversation you choose to enter. You are no longer just practicing a language, you are living it. And in that living, you have found a voice that is uniquely yours, powerful, imperfect, and beautiful. This is not the end of your story, but the beginning of a lifetime of connection. Welcome to the world of the fluent, not because you are perfect, but because you are finally, vibrantly heard. You are no longer guessing, you are observing, adjusting, and evolving. Finally, we must embrace the most difficult shift of all, prioritizing communication over correction.
We have been conditioned to fear the red pen of our teachers, but in the real world, the only true failure is a failure to connect. Natural fluency is not about speaking perfectly. It is about conveying your thoughts, your jokes, and your emotions with enough ease that the grammar becomes invisible. When you stop obsessing over every preposition and start focusing on the person standing in front of you, the tension evaporates. You find that fluency is a state of mind where your ideas flow faster than your fear. This is the ultimate destination, not a perfect score on a piece of paper, but a meaningful connection with the world around you. We often imagine fluency as a finish line, a golden medal waiting at the end of a long, exhausting race. We measure it in certificates, in the absence of mistakes, or in the speed at which we can recite irregular verbs. But as we stand here today, looking back at the long road we have traveled, we must ask ourselves, what does it truly mean to speak? Fluency is not a perfect score on a piece of paper, nor is it the total erasure of your origins. It is something far more profound, something that cannot be captured by a standardized test. It is the moment the language stops being a puzzle you are trying to solve and starts being the air you breathe. True fluency is a feeling, a subtle shift in the rhythm of your thoughts. It is that quiet morning when you realize you've stopped translating every word in your head before it reaches your lips. It is the ease of a laugh shared with a friend, where the grammar didn't matter as much as the joke. When you are fluent, you are no longer a visitor standing outside the gates of a language asking for permission to enter. You are inside, moving through the rooms of conversation with a natural grace. It is the ability to lose yourself in a story, to feel the weight of a poem, or to express a complex emotion without the fear of your words failing you. The most significant transformation happens when you stop identifying as a student and start seeing yourself as a communicator.
To master the language is to master its song, learning where to pause, where to soar, and where to let the voice drop into a soft, intimate whisper that speaks directly to the listener's soul. To truly capture this rhythm, we must move beyond the traditional methods of study and embrace the practice of shadowing. This is not a search for meaning, but a search for movement. Imagine yourself as a shadow, trailing just a fraction of a second behind a speaker, mimicking their pace, their pauses, and their peculiar stresses. You are not trying to translate, you are trying to dance. By focusing on the rhythm rather than the individual vocabulary, you retrain your muscles and your ears to recognize the natural heartbeat of English. You begin to feel the language in your chest, understanding the swing that makes it unique. It is a physical transformation as much as a mental one, a way to internalize the flow until it becomes your own. As we peel back the layers of connected speech, we realize that language is not a static object to be dissected, but a living, breathing entity. When you stop fighting the flow and start riding the current, the world opens up in a new way. You no longer just hear words, you feel the pulse of the message behind them. This secret sauce is the final bridge between being a student of English and being a part of the English-speaking world. It is the quiet confidence that comes when you realize that you are no longer translating in your head, but speaking directly from the heart, connected to every sound and every listener in a profound, rhythmic harmony. Have you ever noticed that a dictionary can tell you what a word means, but it rarely tells you how it feels? To truly master English, one must step out of the sterile pages of a glossary and into the vibrant, messy reality of cultural nuance. This is where the magic happens, where a learner stops translating and starts thinking. In the present day, with global connectivity at an all-time high, the gap between correct English and natural English has never been more apparent.
We often treat language like a mathematical equation, believing that if we swap one word for its equivalent, the message remains the same.
But language is an art form, a living organism that breathes through the collective experiences of its speakers. Understanding this distinction is the first step toward true fluency. Consider a simple sentiment like, "I am very happy." While grammatically perfect, it often sounds flat to a native ear, like a monochromatic painting in a world of color. Idiomatic thinking allows us to paint with broader strokes. We do not just feel joy, we are over the moon, on cloud 9, or perhaps thrilled to bits. These are not just decorative flourishes, they are the emotional shorthand of a culture. When you use an idiom, you are not just communicating a fact, you are signaling that you share a common understanding of the world. It's the difference between reading a musical score and actually playing the instrument with soul. To move beyond the dictionary is to embrace the colorful, often illogical expressions that define our humanity. If idioms are the color, then phrasal verbs are the very engine of daily American life. Phrases like "get over it," "bring it up," or "look forward to" are the building blocks of natural conversation. For many learners, these combinations seem like a cruel trick of linguistics. Why must a simple verb change its entire meaning with a small preposition? Yet, for an American, these words provide a physical sense to abstract ideas. We do not just recover from a cold, we get over it, as if climbing a fence. We do not just mention a topic, we bring it up from the depths of silence. Mastering these is not about memorizing a list, it's about feeling the kinetic energy within the language, understanding that English is a language of action and movement. This brings us to the unique structure of American communication, often described as low context. In many cultures, the meaning of a conversation is hidden behind layers of social hierarchy, tradition, and what is left unsaid. However, in the United States, the burden of communication lies on the speaker to be as clear and direct as possible. We value getting straight to the point. This cultural trait influences the language itself, favoring clarity over ornamentation. When a dictionary gives you 5 synonyms for important, the cultural context tells you which one conveys urgency without sounding pretentious. Understanding this low-context nature helps a learner realize that English is not just about the words you choose, but about the transparency and efficiency you bring to the exchange. Ultimately, the journey from a dictionary definition to cultural nuance is a journey of transformation. It is the transition from being a guest in a language to becoming a resident. When you begin to grasp why certain words resonate and why others fall flat, you are not just learning a skill, you are expanding your worldview. You are learning to see the world through a different lens, one that values directness, movement, and emotional vividness. As we navigate this ever-changing global landscape, remember that language is the most powerful bridge we have. By reaching for the nuance beyond the definition, you are not just speaking English, you are living it, breathing it, and connecting with the world in its most authentic form. Imagine walking into a room and feeling like a different person just because of the sounds coming out of your mouth. For many, English feels like a mask, a heavy, awkward one that hides their true self. But what if I told you that English isn't a mask, but a performance? Developing your English persona is about more than just memorizing vocabulary. It is about finding a new frequency for your soul to vibrate on. In this chapter, we explore the profound transition from being a student of a language to becoming a dweller within it. This isn't just about grammar, it's about the art of being someone new while remaining fundamentally you.
One of the greatest hurdles to true fluency is the exhausting process of internal translation. When you try to build a bridge between your native tongue and English in real time, you are constantly living in the gap between thoughts. To truly speak, you must stop translating and start being. This means embracing the cultural rhythms, the specific pauses, and the unique emotional weight that English words carry. You are not just swapping words, you are adopting a new way of processing reality.
When you stop looking for the exact equivalent of your native idioms and start feeling the intent behind English phrases, your English self begins to breathe on its own, free from the tethers of your first language. Think of language as a stage where you are the lead actor. Every language has its own music, its own physical gestures, and its own specific personality. Your English persona might be more direct, more playful, or perhaps more analytical than your native self. This is the hidden freedom that bilingualism offers, the chance to reinvent how you interact with the world. You aren't losing your identity, you are expanding it. By giving yourself permission to perform, you bypass the self-consciousness that keeps you silent. You allow yourself to experiment with tone and melody until you find a voice that feels authentic, even if the sounds are still relatively new to your ears. We must also dismantle the myth of the perfect speaker that haunts so many learners. So many are paralyzed by the fear of a misplaced preposition or a fractured tense, yet they forget the fundamental purpose of language: connection. In the real world, native speakers rarely notice the technical mechanics of your speech if your message is clear and your energy is present. They are looking for the person, not the textbook. The freedom to make mistakes is the secret fuel of a successful English persona. When you stop apologizing for your journey, you start commanding the room. Your errors are simply the brushstrokes of a voice in progress, and your confidence is what truly defines your fluency. Ultimately, your English persona is a bridge to a version of yourself that you haven't met yet. It is a vessel for your dreams, your stories, and your unique perspective on a global stage. As you move forward, remember that you are not just learning a skill, you are building a home in a new world. Embrace the discomfort, enjoy the playfulness of the performance, and trust that your voice, in all its imperfect glory, is exactly what the world needs to hear. You are no longer just a student of English, you are an English speaker, and your story is only just beginning.
Fluency is often misunderstood as the absence of mistakes, but in reality, it is the presence of flow. We spend years memorizing rules, yet we freeze when the world speaks back to us. To achieve natural fluency, we must dismantle the traditional classroom mindset and embrace the messy, vibrant reality of language as it lives and breathes in the streets, in the homes, and in the hearts of people. This is not a journey of memorization, but a journey of transformation. By shifting our focus from the mechanics to the music of English, we begin to unlock a door that has been closed for far too long. To speak naturally is to stop being a student of the language and to start being a participant in its story. The first strategy in our process is prioritizing input over output. For years we have been told to just speak, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. To speak like a human, you must listen to how humans actually talk. This means moving away from stiff, scripted dialogues in textbooks and toward the raw authenticity of vlogs and podcasts. When you listen to a traveler sharing their soul on a vlog, or two friends debating life on a podcast, you are absorbing the fillers, the pauses, and the rhythmic shortcuts that define natural speech. You are not just learning words, you are downloading a culture and a cadence that allows your brain to recognize patterns before you even attempt to replicate them. This is the foundation, filling your mind with the genuine textures of modern English. Once the input has settled into your subconscious, we move to the recording method. This is where most learners hesitate, yet it is where the greatest breakthroughs occur. By recording yourself speaking and then listening back with a critical but kind ear, you begin to identify the robotic patterns that hold you back. You notice where your sentences feel jagged and where your intonation falls flat compared to the native voices you have been consuming. It is a process of self-discovery that bridges the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical execution. It turns you into both the student and the teacher, allowing you to fine-tune your voice until it resonates with the natural frequency of the language.